He was a voice of reason in countless broken marriages, a respected counselor who helped others heal. But behind closed doors, Vanessa Grant, his wife, never knew her own marriage was quietly falling apart. When she discovered that her husband, Mitchell, had been having a secret affair with his young secretary, everything she believed in shattered. Rage replaced reason. Obsession took over. And one fateful night, a gunshot silenced a man she once promised to love forever. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a chilling descent into heartbreak, obsession, and a brutal crime that would shock an entire community. This is where love turns deadly. This is a case of Mitchell Grant, the marriage counselor who couldn't save his own marriage, and how one secret love affair ended in a calculated, cold-blooded killing. In this story, we will dive into the secret affair of a marriage counselor that led to a cold-blooded murder. To the outside world, Mitchell and Vanessa Grant looked like the embodiment of a successful American couple. They lived in a spacious 5-bedroom colonial-style home in the heart of Westford, Illinois, an affluent suburb known for its award-winning schools, manicured lawns, and gated communities where neighbors waved politely but never pried too deep. Mitchell, 42, had built a thriving private practice as a marriage counselor. But he wasn't just any therapist. He was a marriage counselor couples sought out when things got desperate. With over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube and several appearances on national daytime talk shows, Mitchell's brand blended clinical advice with charismatic delivery. He had the look, tall, clean-shaven, with a voice that felt like reassurance. His podcast, Reignite the Fire, pulled in 6 figures annually through sponsorships and membership access alone. Vanessa, 39, was equally accomplished in her own right. A registered pediatric nurse at Ridgeview Medical Center, she'd won multiple awards for her compassionate care and attention to detail. Her co-workers describe her as warm, grounded, and incredibly meticulous, someone who remembered every birthday and followed up with families weeks after discharge. Together, they looked untouchable. Married for 13 years, they had 2 children, Maddie, 9, and Jackson, 6. Their Instagram profiles were curated with smiling family photos at pumpkin patches, ski trips in Colorado, and sun-drenched Disney vacations. Holiday cards arrived on time. Mitchell drove a Tesla Model S. Vanessa drove a Mercedes SUV. Their lawn was always trimmed. The kids enrolled in music and gymnastics, and the golden retriever, Charlie, never missed a grooming appointment. But perfection can be blinding. Behind the glass smile of their marriage was a slow-burning disconnect that neither of them spoke about publicly. Mitchell spent longer and longer hours at work, not just with clients, but on content creation, networking events, and collaboration dinners that increasingly excluded Vanessa. Vanessa noticed a change. She wasn't naive, but she wasn't ready to admit to herself what the change might mean. She told herself it was a price of ambition, that growing a media empire took time, energy, and sacrifice. So she smiled through the exhaustion, ignored the late-night texts he said were work-related, and tucked her questions behind a mask of support. But cracks were beginning to show. She started to feel like a guest in her own marriage. Mitchell's compliments had stopped. Conversations became transactional. Intimacy dwindled to near extinction. And when Vanessa suggested couples therapy, ironically, Mitchell brushed it off with a dismissive, "I know how this goes. We're just tired. We're fine." In truth, Mitchell wasn't fine. He was distracted, emotionally, physically, and increasingly detached from the life he had carefully built. That's when Rachel Price entered the picture. Rachel was 26, young, energetic, and ambitious. She had a background in psychology and was hired initially as a part-time assistant to help Mitchell with scheduling, podcast uploads, and managing his online brand. But within weeks, she became a central figure in his daily life. She was everything Vanessa wasn't, not because Vanessa lacked anything, but because Rachel played the part Mitchell craved: admiration without confrontation, attention without accountability. She laughed at all his jokes. She knew his content inside out. She worked late. She complimented his ideas like they were revolutionary. And most importantly, she listened. Their bond intensified quickly. What began as casual compliments turned into flirtation. What started as lingering office chats turned into late-night texting marathons. Vanessa noticed the shift, even if she didn't yet have proof. Rachel, for her part, knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just an employee. She was a student of psychology who had once been Mitchell's fan, a listener of his podcasts, a follower of his TikTok clips, and an attendee at his 2021 live webinar in Chicago. She knew how to position herself. She played the role of confidant. She mirrored his language. She made herself indispensable. Within 6 months, she was promoted to full-time executive assistant. She traveled with him to speaking events. She booked his hotel rooms. She proofread his articles. And eventually, she crossed a line from admiration into obsession. Vanessa found the first clue by accident. She had borrowed Mitchell's laptop to print a school flyer. When she opened the browser, it auto-loaded an email draft from a Gmail alias, one she didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You're the only thing keeping me sane." The body of the email was worse. It included a hotel confirmation, a list of reasons I love you, and a closing sentence that burned into her memory. "I'll tell her after the Denver trip. I promise." Vanessa didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she played the long game. She started checking his phone while he showered, installed a silent keylogger on the desktop in his office, logged into their shared Verizon account to track text logs. And what she uncovered wasn't just an affair. It was a relationship. Dozens of photos, voice memos, a secret shared Spotify playlist titled Us. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning a life. Mitchell had told Rachel he was filing for separation, that Vanessa was emotionally cold, that he only stayed for the kids. He'd promised to make it official after his new book release. But Mitchell never followed through. He delayed. He stalled. He told Rachel he needed more time. And when Vanessa confronted him in late June, he denied everything, called her paranoid, said she was overthinking things, gaslit her into silence. That was the final straw. Vanessa stopped asking for answers and started preparing for revenge. She hired a forensic expert. She downloaded every message, every screenshot, every voicemail. She met with a divorce attorney in secret. She canceled the credit card Rachel had been using for business expenses. She even started leaving her phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked, baiting Mitchell to check it, hoping he'd panic. He never did. Mitchell had become comfortable, too confident. He thought he had control over both women. But what he didn't know was that Rachel was also unraveling. She had believed him when he said he'd leave his wife, believed every we're meant to be lying. But now, his distance felt deliberate, his excuses more scripted. She felt used. And when she found out Vanessa had confronted him and he still hadn't ended his marriage, something inside her snapped. Rachel began sending anonymous messages to Vanessa's work email. Accusations, threats, hints that Mitchell had more secrets than she even knew. And then, 2 weeks before the murder, Rachel was fired. Officially, Mitchell cited boundary issues. Unofficially, he wanted out without the mess. But the damage had already been done. Rachel didn't just lose a job. She lost a future she thought was promised. Vanessa, meanwhile, had everything she needed: digital evidence, motive, and rage. But Mitchell thought the worst had passed. On July 2nd, he posted a video to his YouTube channel titled Healing After Betrayal, When Trust is Broken. In it, he spoke calmly, offering advice to couples struggling with infidelity. He ended the video by saying, "The truth doesn't destroy people. Lies do. If you want to heal, start by owning what you've done." 12 hours later, Mitchell Grant was dead. July 3rd began like any other humid summer morning in West Ford, Illinois. But by 9 a.m., police were parked outside the Grant residence. Yellow tape cordoned off the driveway. News vans lined the curb. Mitchell Grant, the man known for saving marriages, was found dead in his home office. He'd been shot once in the chest. Close range. No signs of forced entry. No defensive wounds. The home security system had been turned off, manually, at 11:42 p.m. the night before. The only people with access to that code were Vanessa and Mitchell. By all appearances, this looked personal. But to understand how things reached this violent tipping point, we need to rewind 3 weeks, back to the moment the lies began to collapse. Vanessa Grant was not the type to react on impulse. She was calculated, disciplined, but betrayal changes people. It rewires trust burns away logic, and creates a space where emotion takes over. She'd spent years supporting Mitchell, built her life around his schedule, paused a career to raise their kids, stood behind him as his name became household among relationship coaches. But when she realized she'd been cast aside for a younger woman from his office, the betrayal cut deep. She didn't scream. She didn't cry in front of him. She investigated. Within 48 hours of discovering the draft email on his laptop, Vanessa had already tracked down Rachel Price's apartment address. It was easy. Mitchell had left the info in his Dropbox, hidden in plain sight. Vanessa paid her first visit on a Sunday afternoon. She didn't knock. She waited. From across the street. Just watched. Rachel emerged around 6 p.m., coffee in hand, earbuds in, oblivious. Vanessa didn't speak to her. Not that day. She just needed to see the girl for herself, see what kind of person could destroy a family without blinking. The second visit came 2 days later. This time, she followed Rachel to a grocery store, then to a yoga studio, then to a wine bar where Rachel met a friend and laughed without a care in the world. Vanessa, meanwhile, was unraveling. Mitchell still hadn't confessed, still insisted she was imagining things. He refused to admit to anything, called it emotional manipulation, turned every confrontation into a guilt trip, said things like, "I'm allowed to have female employees. Why are you acting paranoid?" But Vanessa had the screenshots, the phone records, the proof. She was done playing polite. So she made a choice. She printed copies of the emails, the text threads, the hotel receipts. She mailed one packet to Rachel's building manager anonymously, another to Mitchell's publisher. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. It was never about exposure. It was about control. Mitchell found out within days. His publisher called, asking questions. His podcast sponsor pulled out. Rachel stopped answering his messages. That night, Mitchell came home drunk. He slammed the front door, threw his briefcase on the floor, accused Vanessa of sabotaging everything he built. "You're destroying me," he shouted. "You did that on your own," she replied, her voice cold. Steady, he threatened divorce. She welcomed it. He stormed into the guest room. She locked her bedroom door. The next morning, Vanessa called her attorney, began formal separation paperwork, requested sole custody, froze the joint account. But Mitchell wasn't done lying. He told his team that Vanessa was having an emotional breakdown, told friends she was unstable, meddling in things she didn't understand. He tried to control the narrative before the truth could take root, except the truth was already spreading. The text threads leaked. Reddit forums that followed Mitchell's work started speculating. His YouTube comments turned hostile. And Rachel? She retaliated in her own way. She filed a workplace harassment report, sent her own packet of emails to Mitchell's publisher, painting herself as a victim of a power imbalance. The scandal ballooned. Mitchell's reputation began to sink. Speaking engagements were canceled. Sponsors went quiet. His assistant quit. Clients rescheduled. By the time he walked into his office on June 27th, the empire he had built on trust, transparency, and emotional connection was falling apart. He called Vanessa that afternoon, asked to meet, not to apologize, but to negotiate. He wanted a clean separation. No court battles. No smearing his name. He even offered her a financial settlement. But Vanessa, by now, wasn't interested in money. She wanted the truth acknowledged. She said no. He threatened to go public, to twist the story in his favor. Said if she pushed this any further, he'd ruin her reputation. Said she was unstable, jealous, unfit. She hung up. That was the last real conversation they ever had. The following week, Vanessa told close friends that Mitchell was dangerous when cornered. That he was saying things he never said before, about custody, about her mental health, about taking the kids and starting over. She warned her lawyer, documented everything, even bought a voice recorder, one of those small, pen-style devices, and started wearing it clipped under her blouse. She wasn't going to be taken down quietly. On July 1st, Mitchell attempted to contact Rachel again. Left a voicemail around 2 a.m. "Please talk to me. I didn't mean for this to happen. You know how I feel about you. You know what this was." She never responded. That day, Rachel called a former friend, someone from her graduate program, and said she was done being patient, that she had given up too much to be erased. No one knows exactly what she meant, but on July 2nd, at approximately 11 p.m., Vanessa returned home from a late shift. Security footage confirmed her car pulling into the driveway. By 11:42 p.m., the alarm system was turned off. By midnight, Mitchell was dead. Police reports would later note there were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints beyond the family's, no trace DNA, no defensive wounds. Whoever pulled the trigger either knew him or caught him off guard. In the hours following the murder, rumors erupted like wildfire. Had Vanessa snapped? Had Rachel returned to confront him? Had someone else, someone entirely unknown, taken advantage of the chaos? The betrayal had already destroyed reputations. But now, it had claimed a life. What began as a secret affair had spiraled into a public disaster, and now a homicide investigation. The lie Mitchell buried for months, the one he denied, concealed, and minimized, was no longer just a marital issue. It was a criminal case, and everyone involved had a motive. The first 911 call came from a neighbor, a woman named Grace Holloway, who lived directly across the street. She was up late, watching a crime drama rerun, when she heard what she described as a sharp bang, like a firecracker. She initially dismissed it. Westford wasn't the kind of neighborhood where things like this happened. But when a dog began barking nonstop and motion lights triggered in the Grant's driveway, she walked to her window, just in time to see a silhouette rush down the side of the Grant residence and disappear into the trees. She dialed 911, breath unsteady. At 1:24 a.m., police arrived. No sirens, no lights, just quiet caution. They knocked. No answer. They circled the house, looking for entry points. Nothing broken, no smashed locks, no busted glass. At 1:35 a.m., officers made the call to enter the home. They found Mitchell Grant slumped behind his desk, eyes open, fixed, a pool of blood spreading across the floor. His phone sat beside him, screen cracked. A single .38 caliber shell casing rested by his right foot. There were no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, just silence. A half-drunk glass of whiskey sat untouched beside a closed laptop. The initial impression was chilling. Mitchell had been seated when he was shot. There were no defensive wounds, no visible bruises. One bullet, point blank, center mass. Whoever had done this likely stood directly across from him, looked him in the eyes, pulled the trigger, and walked out. Detective Alana Briggs, lead on the case, arrived by 2:15 a.m. Her first instinct was that this wasn't a robbery. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, precise, personal. The home had been secured. Nothing was taken. No forced entry. Someone with access had either walked in with permission or already had a way in. The digital trail told its own story. The home's alarm code was deactivated manually at 11:42 p.m., a little over an hour before Mitchell's body was discovered. The code used matched the one assigned to Vanessa Grant. But Vanessa had an alibi. She had been working a late shift at the emergency room, and her hospital badge confirmed her clock-in and clock-out times. She even appeared in background footage on another staff member's live stream at 11:56 p.m. Still, Briggs didn't rule her out. Not because of evidence, but because of motive. In the world of true crime, proximity isn't always about location. It's about emotional closeness, the people with the most to lose or the most to gain. Vanessa had both. By sunrise, the street was a crime scene. Yellow tape lined the sidewalks. Curious neighbors whispered from their porches. News vans rolled in before breakfast. Mitchell's publicist released a short statement. "We are devastated by the tragic loss of Mitchell Grant, a man whose voice saved thousands of relationships. We ask for privacy and compassion as we process this loss." But compassion was in short supply online. Screenshots of the affair resurfaced. Reddit threads exploded. Was this the consequence of a double life finally collapsing? Or was someone silencing him before more came out? Inside the house, forensics teams worked meticulously. One of the most important clues came from Mitchell's desktop, a scheduled Zoom meeting. Still open, still recording. The video was set for midnight, July 3rd. A confidential discussion marked only with the initials RP. Rachel Price. It appeared Mitchell had planned to speak with her privately, perhaps to mend things, perhaps to plead, perhaps for reasons still unclear. But Rachel never joined. Instead, the camera caught 31 seconds of Mitchell waiting, sipping whiskey. Then a knock. Then a voice. Muffled. Not identifiable. Mitchell leaned forward to pause the recording. He didn't get the chance. The screen froze at 12:06 a.m., mid-movement. That's when the shot was fired. The shooter never appeared in the frame. But what the camera did catch was enough. Mitchell startled, shoulders jerking back. Then silence. Briggs froze the video and replayed it 4 times. Each time, her gut tightened. The scene didn't scream rage. It didn't look spontaneous. It looked like a confrontation that ended in resolve. The kind of resolve you don't find in break-ins. You find it in vendettas. By mid-afternoon, they brought Rachel Price in for questioning. She was nervous, jittery, not defensive, but not surprised either. She admitted she had once been in a relationship with Mitchell. She claimed he had been manipulative, that he made promises, then backed away. She said she hadn't seen him in person since she left her job 2 weeks ago. Claimed she was at a friend's house the night of the murder. Her alibi, a sleepover with 2 close friends in Oak Park. Detectives verified it. Mostly, there were text messages, location data, and witness statements confirming she had arrived at the apartment complex by 10:45 p.m. But a small gap in time, between 11:15 and midnight, remained unaccounted for. Enough to raise suspicion. Not enough to make an arrest. Meanwhile, Vanessa returned to the home under police escort. She didn't ask to go into the office. She walked straight to the living room, picked up a framed photo of their family, and sat down. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just stared. When detectives asked if she knew of anyone who wanted to hurt Mitchell, she hesitated, then said only, "He hurt a lot of people in ways no one ever saw." A week passed, then another. Mitchell's funeral was held privately, a small, tense gathering of family, legal associates, and a few loyal clients. The press wasn't allowed near. The investigation stalled. No murder weapon, no prints, no definitive DNA. But Briggs wasn't done. She dug deeper into the Zoom file, found metadata, discovered that a Bluetooth device had synced to Mitchell's laptop just before the call. It was a smartphone, not his. That meant someone had been close enough to connect wirelessly. A search warrant was issued. By August 9th, a breakthrough came. Vanessa's hidden recorder, the pen-style device she kept on her, had captured more than she realized. 2 nights before Mitchell's murder, he confronted her in the kitchen. The audio captured him saying, "You think you're smart? You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You're nothing without me, Vanessa." And her reply, "Not for long." The words weren't an admission of guilt, but they hinted at a motive, power, fear, resentment. Still, she had the alibi, which meant one of 2 things. Either she orchestrated it, or someone else acted for reasons of their own. The bullet retrieved from Mitchell's chest was traced to a .38 revolver model commonly owned but rarely registered in the state. Ballistics revealed no unique markings. The serial number had been filed off. The killer knew what they were doing. Whoever pulled the trigger wanted Mitchell silenced. Not punished, not exposed, just gone. By the end of August, detectives had a list of 3 strong persons of interest. But only one had proximity. Only one had motive, rage, and access. And only one had gone silent. Rachel Price had disappeared. Rachel Price didn't show up for work the Monday after Mitchell Grant's funeral. That alone wasn't suspicious. She had already left the firm weeks earlier. But when Detective Alana Briggs and her team visited the Oak Park apartment complex where Rachel was last seen, things shifted from curious to troubling. Her roommates hadn't seen her in days. Her phone? Disconnected. Her car? Still parked outside, untouched. Inside her room, nothing seemed out of place. The bed was made. Her duffel bag still sat at the foot. A suitcase remained in her closet. But the top dresser drawer was empty, no wallet, no keys, no passport. She was gone, but not in a rush. Not with chaos. With intent. A missing persons report was filed. Now, the case pivoted. No longer just a homicide. It became a dual probe, one murder, one disappearance. Possibly connected, possibly not. But Alana Briggs didn't believe in coincidences. Back at the precinct, a deeper forensic dive into Mitchell Grant's email history revealed that he'd scheduled multiple private meetings under the alias Alan Rivers on a separate Gmail account. Most of the appointments were labeled generically: Consultation A, Follow-up Session, Private Conversation. The names attached to these meetings were all women, many of them former clients. One of them, Rachel Price. But another name stood out, Maya Caldwell. A quick background search revealed that Maya had been in couples therapy with her husband, Eric Caldwell, 3 years prior. The sessions were brief, just 3 appointments. But something odd came up. Eric Caldwell had filed a restraining order against Mitchell Grant 2 months after the therapy ended. No details were available publicly, but Briggs pushed for the sealed court records. What she found made her blood chill. According to the filing, Eric claimed Mitchell had crossed professional boundaries with his wife, repeatedly texting her outside of sessions, inviting her for private dinners, and, eventually, showing up at her workplace. The request for the restraining order had been denied due to insufficient evidence, but Maya quit her job and moved to a new city shortly after. Briggs had her tech unit recover deleted messages from Mitchell's private phone, recently backed up to the cloud. Several texts to Maya surfaced. "You can't ghost me, Maya. Not after everything we shared. You owe me honesty. I saved your marriage. Now you pretend like I'm a stranger. I don't take betrayal lightly." They dated back to just 4 months before Mitchell's death. Maya had never responded. Briggs considered this carefully. Mitchell wasn't just a man living a double life. He was possibly abusing the trust of his clients under the guise of professionalism. He knew their weaknesses. He knew their pain points. And he knew how to manipulate them. When the team questioned Maya at her new address in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, she was guarded but forthcoming. "Yes, he crossed a line," she admitted. "But I didn't report him. I thought maybe I'd misread things until he wouldn't stop messaging me. I changed my number, my job, everything." "Did you ever threaten to go public?" Briggs asked. "No, I just wanted to disappear. And now you're telling me he's dead." Maya didn't fit the profile of a killer, but she reinforced an emerging theme. Mitchell Grant wasn't the man he pretended to be. He was collecting secrets and breaking boundaries. And someone had finally had enough. 2 weeks later, the break came from an unexpected angle. A quiet conversation with a delivery driver named Alan Lopez, who regularly dropped off packages to Mitchell's office, turned up something new. "I saw Rachel there the night before he was killed," Alan said. "Late. Like almost midnight." "You're sure it was her?" "Positive. She was crying. He let her in through the back door. I was dropping off a missed delivery. She looked upset. I didn't stick around." This was critical. It placed Rachel at the scene the night before the murder, potentially the last person to see Mitchell alive. Police put out a bolo, "Be on the lookout," for Rachel Price. Meanwhile, inside the crime lab, ballistics technicians re-examined the .38 caliber bullet. On a hunch, they tested it against a recovered revolver from an old robbery case that had gone cold, a weapon seized from a pawn shop in Newark 2 years ago. The match was 87%, not enough for legal certainty, but a compelling lead. Further research linked the firearm to a man named Jordan Fields, a convicted felon who had done time with Eric Caldwell, Maya's ex-husband. The case now tangled deeper. If Eric had arranged for the weapon, was Maya complicit? Or was this part of a web spun far beyond what detectives had first imagined? To find out, Briggs revisited Vanessa Grant. This time, she came armed with the new evidence, Mitchell's manipulation of clients, his text history, and the possible confrontation with Rachel. Vanessa listened quietly. When the detective finished, she nodded slowly. "I knew," she said. "Not everything, but enough. Enough to make you angry." Briggs asked. "No, enough to make me numb." "Did you know he was meeting Rachel the night he died?" Vanessa hesitated. "Yes, she called me 2 hours before. She said she was scared, that Mitchell was threatening her. I told her to leave it alone." "Did you go to the house that night?" "No," Vanessa said calmly, "but I wish I had." 3 days later, Rachel Price was found. Not in hiding. Not on the run. She was discovered in a motel room outside Chicago, unconscious. She had taken an overdose of prescription sleeping pills. There was no suicide note, just a torn photograph of her and Mitchell, folded neatly inside a worn paperback novel. She was revived at the hospital, and when she regained consciousness, she told detectives everything. She had gone to the house that night. Mitchell had promised to apologize, to make things right, to offer her a settlement if she agreed not to speak publicly about their affair. But when she arrived, he laughed at her, mocked her, said he had recordings, said no one would ever believe her. "I lost it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I shoved him. He fell. I didn't shoot him, I swear. I left." "Did anyone else see you leave?" Briggs asked. Rachel shook her head. "I thought I was the only one there." But she wasn't. Vanessa had received the same call Rachel had made, only she didn't ignore it. Vanessa had gone to the house after all. She parked a block away, waited, watched, and when Rachel left, shaken, Vanessa entered through the side door. She knew the alarm code. She knew the layout. She knew where Mitchell kept the hidden gun he once claimed was for protection. What happened next wasn't heat of the moment. It was calculation. But what Vanessa hadn't counted on was that Mitchell had triggered his computer camera for that Zoom call, or that Rachel's visit would become a point of timeline comparison. The evidence was circumstantial, but the puzzle was beginning to fit. All Briggs needed was one final piece, one move that would force Vanessa to reveal herself. So she made the decision, announced Rachel's arrest. The media ran wild. Secretary charged in love triangle murder. And Vanessa Grant made a phone call to her lawyer. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the hallway. True crime bloggers sat in the front row with tablets in hand, and camera crews stood outside capturing every face that entered. This wasn't just another domestic murder case. This was betrayal in high definition, a love triangle entangled in deception, professional abuse, and a brutal killing. At the center of it all sat Vanessa Grant, the grieving wife-turned-prime suspect. She wore a navy suit, no jewelry, no makeup, hands folded in her lap. From a distance, she looked composed, but Detective Alana Briggs, sitting behind the prosecution team, knew better. Vanessa wasn't calm. She was calculating. The trial began with opening statements. Assistant District Attorney Melissa Chambers stood and addressed the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is not about a crime of passion. It's about a carefully executed plan to silence a man who lived by manipulation and died by it. Mitchell Grant betrayed his vows, violated his profession, and exploited his clients. But that does not justify murder. You will see that Vanessa Grant, with full awareness and deliberate action, entered that home the night of March 11th and shot her husband in the chest, eliminating the one person who held the power to ruin her perfect image." The defense attorney, Jeremy Fields, countered swiftly. Mitchell Grant was a deeply flawed man. That is not in dispute. But Vanessa Grant did not kill him. In fact, there's no physical evidence placing her at the scene, no DNA, no fingerprints, no murder weapon tied to her. What this case has, Your Honor, is assumptions, speculation, and a desperate need for someone to blame when the real killer, Rachel Price, already confessed to being in the house, angry, scared, and with motive. The chessboard was set, but the prosecution had more than speculation. They had momentum. Briggs took the stand and walked the jury through the initial discovery, the position of Mitchell's body, the single bullet wound, and the open laptop that had recorded most of the evening's audio. No video, just sound. But what a sound it captured. Don't walk away from me again. You think you can control this? Silence. Footsteps. Then a gunshot. Forensic audio experts enhanced the track. A female voice, not Rachel's, was identified. Calm, cold, intentional. And then the silence of death. Briggs also testified about Vanessa's financial records. 2 months before Mitchell's death, she had quietly withdrawn $40,000 from their joint investment account. It wasn't used for bills. It wasn't deposited elsewhere. It vanished. She was preparing for life without him, Briggs told the court. The courtroom was silent when Rachel took the stand. Pale, thin, dressed modestly in a gray sweater and slacks. Her voice trembled as she described her affair with Mitchell, the promises he made, and the threats he later issued. She admitted to visiting him that night. He told me I was pathetic, that no one would believe me. He said he had footage of us. He laughed. The defense pressed her. Did you ever touch the weapon? No. Did you see Vanessa that night? No. I left before anyone else arrived. Then came the question that shifted the jury's posture. Did Mitchell ever mention someone else knowing about your affair? Yes. He said his wife knew, that she always knew. The prosecution introduced metadata from the smart home system. Although Mitchell's laptop camera didn't record visuals, the home security system logged door activity. At 12:21 a.m., the rear entry door was opened with a code registered under Vanessa Grant's phone number, the same number used for her banking alerts and her Uber account. She had told police she was asleep at her sister's house across town. But cell tower pings placed her phone near her marital home from 11:58 p.m. to 12:45 a.m., the exact window of the murder. When the data hit the courtroom projector, Vanessa's hands clenched slightly in her lap. Not enough for most to notice. But the jurors did. One of them tilted her head. Weeks before the trial, investigators discovered a deleted draft email in Mitchell's secondary Gmail account. Subject line, in case anything happens. It was written, but never sent. Timestamp, March 10th, one day before his death. In it, Mitchell confessed to multiple affairs and hinted that someone close to him had threatened to expose him. I've done wrong, but I don't deserve what she's planning. If something happens to me, start by looking at Vanessa. The defense called it emotional drama. But the jury leaned in. The defense tried to salvage Vanessa's image. Friends, co-workers, and a church counselor testified that she was compassionate, level-headed, and deeply religious. They insisted she was a glue in her marriage, that she stood by Mitchell despite the rumors. But under cross-examination, it was revealed that Vanessa had previously hired a private investigator, not to find proof of infidelity, but to gather leverage. ADA Chambers closed that segment with a crisp statement. Faith isn't measured by how often you go to church. It's measured by what you do when no one's watching. Chambers approached the jury for the final time. Vanessa Grant lived with a man who betrayed her publicly, privately, and profoundly, but she didn't seek therapy. She didn't file for divorce. She didn't walk away. She waited, and when the time was right, she made sure he could never humiliate her again. This wasn't rage. It was revenge, and you have the proof. Jeremy Field stood last. There is no smoking gun here, no eyewitness, no fingerprints, no murder weapon. And while we all feel for Rachel Price and the other women Mitchell harmed, don't mistake bad behavior for proof of murder. You are here to uphold law, not to fix pain. The jury was instructed. The courtroom emptied for deliberation. But outside those wooden doors, tension rippled through every hallway. 2 lives destroyed, 1 buried, 1 on trial, and the city watched. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Not long, considering the magnitude of what was at stake. Not long, given the lives that had already unraveled in the courtroom. When the judge's assistant quietly slipped back in and whispered that a verdict had been reached, the tension in the room turned electric. Everyone returned to their seats. The press, the families, the attorneys. And at the center of it all, Vanessa Grant sat motionless, her jaw tight, her hands folded like always, except this time her fingers trembled ever so slightly. The judge entered. The bailiff called for order. And then the foreman stood. In the matter of the People versus Vanessa Elaine Grant, we find the defendant guilty of murder in the 2nd degree. A deep gasp rippled across the gallery. Rachel Price broke into tears in the 2nd row. Her hands cupped her mouth as if to muffle the sound of relief. Not victory, just release. A vindication of pain she had been forced to carry in secret for far too long. Vanessa showed no reaction. No tears. No cries. Just the soft lowering of her gaze, as if the entire weight of her world had landed exactly where she had expected it to. The judge thanked the jury, then moved on to sentencing. Before sentencing, the court allowed for victim impact statements. Rachel Price stepped forward, holding a printed page she never looked down to read. Mitchell Grant hurt me. He lied to me. He used his position to blur the lines between counseling and control. I am not here to defend who he was. But no one deserved to die like that, alone, ashamed, and with a bullet in their chest. I didn't kill him. But every day since that night, I felt like I'd been on trial. She turned to Vanessa. I would have left him. You know, if you had just asked me, I would have walked away. We both could have. Then came Mitchell's sister, Dana. She had flown in from Seattle and hadn't spoken to the press once. Her words were quieter, but more cutting. Mitchell was my brother. He made mistakes. Serious ones. But his life wasn't yours to take. You turned grief into calculation. You turned a marriage into a strategy. And now you sit there like none of this was personal. But I promise you, it always was. The judge asked Vanessa if she wished to speak before sentencing. She rose, cleared her throat. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. I won't stand here and paint myself as a victim. Mitchell wasn't the man people thought he was. But I wasn't honest either. I lied. To friends. To clients. To myself. And when everything came to light, I couldn't see a way forward that didn't destroy me. She looked directly at the judge. I didn't plan to kill him, but I didn't stop myself either. And for that, I accept your judgment. The courtroom was silent. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't defiance either, just resignation. Judge LeBlanc adjusted his glasses and began reading from his statement. Vanessa Grant, you committed an irreversible act. You ended a life. You broke the public's trust, and you betrayed every oath tied to your profession, your marriage, and the law. You had choices, legal ones, moral ones. You chose silence, secrecy, and ultimately, violence. He paused. For the crime of murder in the second degree, I sentence you to 25 years to life in a state correctional facility, with a possibility of parole after 22 years. Gasps again, but no protests. Vanessa's attorney leaned in and whispered something. She nodded. She already knew what was coming. The bailiff approached. Vanessa stood, and for the first time in the entire trial, her composure broke. Not into sobs, not into screams, but a single tear that slid down her cheek as she was handcuffed and led through the side door. The woman who had spent her career helping couples build trust was now a cautionary tale in betrayal. The headlines the next morning were relentless. Marriage counselor sentenced for husband's murder in shocking love triangle. Broken vows, fatal consequences. The Vanessa Grant trial ends. Truth, affairs, and a bullet. Inside the fall of Mitchell and Vanessa Grant. Rachel Price disappeared from the public eye after the trial. She resigned from her firm, changed her last name, and moved to Oregon, where she reportedly volunteers at a shelter for women dealing with emotional abuse. Detective Alana Briggs was promoted 6 months later to lead investigator for major crimes. In an interview, she said, "This wasn't just about jealousy. This was about ego, power, and fear." Vanessa Grant didn't just kill her husband. She killed the truth she claimed to protect. The house where Mitchell was murdered was sold at auction. No one in the neighborhood ever talks about it openly, but they remember the sirens, the police tape, the blood on the stays. The community moved on, but the memory didn't. True crime enthusiasts continue to dissect the Grant case on YouTube, podcasts, and TikTok. Some argue Vanessa was pushed too far. Others see her as cold, manipulative, dangerous. But one truth remains. Behind the titles, behind the headlines, 3 lives collided in a way that destroyed them all. And no therapy session in the world could have prepared them for it. Some stories don't end with justice. They end with consequences. Vanessa Grant was once the voice of calm in chaos. A woman trusted by thousands to heal relationships, repair marriages, and offer guidance when life fell apart. But no one knew how broken her own world had become. The truth behind Mitchell Grant's death wasn't just about infidelity. It wasn't just about love, either. It was about power, about pain, about years of pretending everything was fine, until the lie became too big to carry. In one night, a respected marriage counselor became a convicted murderer. A promising secretary lost her job, her identity, and her peace. And a man, flawed as he was silenced forever by the person he once promised to protect. As viewers, as listeners, we're left with more than just a verdict. We're left with questions. How far would you go to preserve the image of a perfect life? How much betrayal does it take to break a person? And when the truth is finally exposed, who pays the price? This case reminds us that even the people who seem to have it all together can be hiding the deepest fractures. That behind certifications, credentials, smiles, and success, real lives, real emotions, and real dangers still exist. We may never fully know what Vanessa was thinking the moment she pulled that trigger. But what we do know is that love, when twisted by secrecy and shame, can destroy everything in its path. Thank you for watching Real Crime Witness. If this story moved you, made you think, or left you questioning what you thought you knew, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share your thoughts below.